Yeah. So essentially, the people that they call native people, or what they want to call Indians, is not the real designation. Those people ancestrally were always referred to as the Almanacanos, because they descended out of what people call the Olmec people. The Olmec people is the oldest people that was here before everybody. The Olmec people hooked up with the ancient Ixi, or Ix people, Ix people out of the ancient Shang dynasty in what they now call Asia or China. And they came over here and they hooked up and consolidated the empire right around the time that Hanno Bay on the northern side came over and set up the Carthaginian Empire and consolidated all of them together. And those empires moved throughout time here, throughout North, Central, South America, created a trade route, trade lines, all of that. But it wasn't until around the 1600s that the Olmecs had, Olmec, Maya, Inca had reconsolidated themselves as what we call the Washita people. And out of the Washita people came sub-nations like the Northern Cree, the Southern Cree, the Sauk, and the Yamasee, which was a part of the old Olmecan Empire and set themselves up in Georgia as their own government, own people. They all went to war. There was intermittent conflict between the 1600s over here and the late 1700s. So much conflict that the Northern Cree, the Southern Cree attacked the Yamasee. And in doing that, when they won, they took all the Yamasee females and married them, and then another nation was created. These are the people we call the Seminole, and then they were given the land down in the Isle of Flowers, Florida. This created, this perpetual war amongst them violated what we used to call the Great Law of Dianoshkwa, which is Islam over here. And based on that, our nation became divided between 1660 and 1774. So by 1774, we reconsolidate the union of the six nations, the 5 civilized tribes, the Iroquois Confederacy, what they also call the Algonquin Confederacy, which is erroneous because Algonquin is a dialect, it can't be a people, and consolidated that in a full faith and credit system that we refer to as the United States of America in Congress Assembly. And they agreed to set up a subcontracting division corporation called the United States that was compiled of a bunch of civil servants, slaves that were enslaved from what we call Albion, what today now they call London, which is over there. But in the 1700s, London, or New England, was the 13 colonies, which was under the jurisdiction of a group of Moors over here called the Lenape, also referred to as the Delaware Indians, erroneously after General Delaware. But they were the ones who flew the Union Jack. That was an original flag that was here from here, that we call the British flag or the flag of the United Kingdom. The original United Kingdom was that of the Moors from Albion over there and the Delaware Lenape Moors from over here. That's why William Penn, in his writings, when you read him, he says that when he came over here, he found the Moors, the Bays, speaking the King's English. So the same Moors he left over there, he came over here and met their cousins. That's us, that's the Americanos. The original copper-colored races that existed in North, Central, South America prior to the European expansion. So when we talk about European between the years 1774 and 1791, we're talking about Moors, right? Meaning melanated people, what today people call mulattoes, who brought with them their Caucasian serf-like slaves, who they raised up through a system of Freemasonry to mine the store once after the conflict they went back home. So once they went back home, they left their so-called Caucasian slaves, who are now Freemasons, as well as captains of the colony, or let's say lieutenants of the colony. They then started to import Moorish prisoners of war and start to re-educate them and use their estates to break away now from the English connection that was already here. This is why we speak English today, because the word revolve means to get back to. So they fought for the right to go back over there and set up kingdoms and dominions over there. And while they were gone, they allowed their lands to be used as establishing the temple was reestablish our position as the descendants of the original people, the original copper-colored races that had governments, empires, kingdoms, and dominions here prior to the founding of the United States Corporation in 1791. Our
That's why
ancestors were then,
1790 is important.
right, that's why it's important, because that set in motion a means for us to be able to receive everything we need to receive now without any pain or having to work or anything like that.
I understand, but let's say most people don't even get that far in understanding why the Moorish Science Temple of America had to be resurrected at that specific time. And when it did, how come it didn't, like, how come it wasn't somewhat respected by other people of color? Like, we usually talk about right after that time it was founded and formed, it was kind of whitewashed. What kind of happened? Why do you think it was whitewashed like that?
People were greedy, and in the end, the significance of what happened was that in 1921, the Sultan of now the House of Saudi Arabia House, established the Islamic monarchy, the Emirates of Riyadh, which established something called the Treaty of Jeddah, which established the gold kingdoms of the Hijaz and the Najid.
Wow.
What that meant was that all of the ancient Islamic titles of nobility, Bey, Dey, Ben Ali, Pasha, whatever, were now reinstated as titles of nobility, and anyone who claimed those now became subjects of a foreign power. That foreign power is the Islamic State, the perpetual Islamic State of Morocco. That is a state that we all exist in because Morocco was the name that was convened in the European powers to represent the ancient trust going all the way back from the ancient world to now.
That's why you can say that you're in Morocco even though you're in Florida.
Right, because I'm in a perpetual state of being based upon my ancestors creating a perpetual state by me being able to link myself up with the original name of the creator, which is Elohim, Bayanu, some of the other things. So within that, us consolidating that title means then that I can't be a citizen of the United States. These ills and bay titles.
See why when you say that, it can trigger energy of like, oh, that's not true. So if you ain't a citizen, then what are you? This is why these niggas get locked up.
If you're not a citizen, then that means that you're a national. If you're a national, that means that you are represented by the Republican form of government, meaning that you are descendant of the original people that was here 150 years to 250 years prior to the establishment of the corporate United States and the consolidated trust known for us, known as the United States of America and Congress Assembly. So when they out here shooting brothers and things like that, they're trying to get rid of as many brothers and sisters before they wake up to the fact that this government is actually set up to protect them, but they have been designated in a different position.
In a different position. And then that
to
takes
not
them out of
receive
the
those
fold.
benefits.
That takes them out of the fold and it allows them to be, in a sense, looked after. So once you...
It doesn't allow them to
That's a horrible
retain,
term.
it doesn't allow them to retain their own
Sense of state.
yes, their own state that allows them to access their estate so that way they can make their heaven on earth.
Okay,
Meaning
hold
that
that
you don't
thought.
have to.
No, not even that. That's hard. You can go. I was going to say hold that thought because we're at 10 minutes. I don't want to go over just because we can say some more. But this is our lives. We can talk about this for an hour and it's actually way too much. So you were saying, and I wasn't trying to cut you, I'm sorry for going off like that. You were saying that based on there being, first of all, some people denounce their citizenship, but they have nothing that they hold into.
Right.
There's nothing to catch them, so they're just willy-nilly out here with no documents. But what you're talking about is something different. And that's what I wanted to create, the distinction of.
The Moorish nation is comprised of Moorish American nationals, but the Moorish nation, as it stands right now, is divided. Just like it was divided
just in
from 17,
which is why
74.
you specifically took time out, and we took time out
Yes.
to create, to resurrect our own, because
Correct.
everything that we saw around us was somewhat already polluted, and we could already see that, okay, even if the intent, it can't, the intent has to be right from the jump. It can't be to make money, it can't be to do anything other than to get to a place that, right.
That's it. And you start with yourself. So you.
So this is why you even had to take time, because
To get it right.
all of these different, you know, I know that you've been studying this for a while, and over 10 years ago, I was like, okay, so you know all this, now what? How does this benefit us? And not like, okay, pull the rabbit out of the hat, but it's almost like there has to be something more. And this is what I've seen drive a lot of people kooky, because they either have no patience to really figure it out, or they get stuck in the material realm of it. But then once they start doing stuff, if there isn't anything for them to fall into, kind of like people with the vaccinations, they want the form, but if you just walk around with the form and it's not coming from something that's larger than you have a greater chance of being pressed and tested than that of which you're not.